for one more person to have quorum. There's Ed, admit. Okay, as soon as Ed is on. A second. Okay. We good to go?
We have a quorum.
Okay, so you have a quorum.
Okay.
In 5,
Awesome.
4, 3.
Okay.
I would say you have a quorum, but do you want to let in your audience?
We can. Yep.
Have a great meeting.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the Littleton Conservation Commission meeting to order. This is May 2nd, 2024. We have 2 items on for discussion. Do we have anything new that we would like to add for discussion items in addition to Webster and 10 Ivy? Okay, if not, I'd like to go ahead and start with the discussion for Webster. It's a review and discussion of a CPC application. Chase, I will gladly turn this over to you for discussion.
Okay, very good. So let me cut to the chase, I suppose. Last night, the Community Preservation Committee, on which Andrew sits, voted to voted to allocate the money from the Open Space Fund for the Webster land acquisition. Their vote was $730,000 for the land acquisition and $30,000 for soft acquisition costs. That includes but isn't limited to a survey and so on. Ed and Andrew, you probably got the backstory yesterday, but let me, and Sarah, and for the sake of the public paying attention, how we got here. So you recall last fall town meeting, Webster property was up on the warrant. $1.4 million did not achieve the 2/3 majority necessary to purchase the property without CPC funds. The Websters came back to us about a month and a half ago or so and said, hey, we'd really like to still consider going forward. Why don't we get another appraisal? Their opinion was that the appraisal that we had before, we'll call it appraisal 1, was very, very low. I'm not sure we agreed with that, but we agreed to go forward with a second appraisal, or I say we. Actually, the Conservation Trust is the entity that funded the second appraisal as well, and I think we're quite in debt to them spending money on a second one. That second appraisal came in a little bit higher at $730,000. I thought it was dead at that point. And for a period of time, it appeared to be dead because it was so much lower than what the Websters were looking for. It appears that they have changed their mind and they're willing to go forward to sell the property to the town. I can't speak entirely eloquently to their motivations, but I think legacy is a very big part of that. Sell it to the town for the appraised value. By selling it to the town for the appraised value, that allows us, if CPC so chooses, to utilize CPC funds. And so the town administrator submitted an application to CPC, which they discussed last night. Andrew was a part of that discussion as a member of CPC, as I said. And we now have, let's say, a viable article before town meeting next Tuesday. The purpose of this meeting, the purpose of the Conservation Commission taking this item up is twofold. One, to make sure everybody's up to speed on it because it's moving rather quickly. But second, it wasn't clear whether or not the town administrator or the Conservation Commission would be submitting the CPC application. It turns out the town administrator did, so we don't need to vote to submit an application. That said, I do think we should discuss and vote on supporting the article for town meeting. And my understanding is the town administrator would like the Conservation Commission to move the article at town meeting and present the article at town meeting. So the primary topic here is, do we support this article?
Hey, Andrew or Ed, thoughts, comments?
That was an excellent recap, Chase. Yeah, we definitely want to take a vote whether or not to support the article. I was one of the voting CPC members last night. We hashed the project out quite lengthily, and I think it's a great buy for the town, a great chance to preserve a really beautiful piece of property, and I I would say, I mean, I'm fully in support.
Was your committee all in support, Andrew?
It was, yeah. What really kind of stuck with us, though, was the funding mechanism. There were three funding options before us last night. One was to buy the property outright using open space reserves, which are about 1.2 million. The second option was to basically bond out half and pay half up front. And then the third option was to bond it out entirely, but then we would have been paying around 75K over the course of 3 years in interest. So we hashed it out quite lengthily and came up with the conclusion that it would be most beneficial to just fund it outright and leave about 550,000 in open space reserves, with a pretty sizable chunk in undesignated as well if there was an emergency that popped up. But yeah, the committee was all in favor, and I think we came up with a pretty good outcome. And thank you again, Chase, for popping in, because I didn't want to essentially vote one way or the other without the input of the commission in terms of funding, because I didn't want to wipe out all of our conservation open space funds, essentially. But after hashing it out, it seemed like the most logical route forward. Even with a 3-year half down, bonding out the other half, we were still paying 35K essentially in interest, which we could use for so many other things, and it just seemed like the best route.
And essentially, my commentary last night to CPC was, it's really their responsibility to figure out the best funding mechanism. You know, the Conservation Commission is in a position to opine on whether or not we should acquire this, but it's really CPC's. This sounds more adversarial than it was. CPC's role to figure out how they want to allocate their money. And how they want to fund it. So I had indicated that in the past, I don't think the Conservation Commission had expressed an opinion on borrowing versus spending cash. And I doubted we would in this case, either at least let's say in a formal context. I think we probably all have opinions on it, but as commission members, we're really looking at, is this a piece of property worth acquiring? Not so much, how should CPC allocate their resources?
Okay. Ed, do you have thoughts?
I like the idea of getting it, but the Morrison Orchard has put a very dirty taste in my mouth. In that, if we do go forward, I want to know that the selectmen can't turn around 4, 5, 6 years from now and say, you know, there's enough land on that Webster property that we could sell it, and it's you know, as long as it's under our control and not the selectmen's control, that it cannot be sold without our approval. I'm okay with that, but like I said, the Morrison Orchard has put a really bad taste in my mouth that they're out there trying to sell that. And don't, please, I appreciate where you're gonna go, the agriculture and all that. I'm just telling you my feelings.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I was going to ask Andrew if he can walk us through and remind us what is the procedure when you take CPC funds. Can it ever be reversed? So for instance, I know we've got our Article 97 for ag, but I'm unsure what CPC does.
So essentially, any piece of property bought for open space purposes using CPA monies, that has to automatically have a conservation restriction placed on it in perpetuity. So it can never be houses once we buy it, and especially once it's transferred into our custody and control. It's like a double layer protection. So nobody can ever just, you know, over the course of so many years, just say, hey, you know what, actually, let's sell it for, you know, whatever purpose. It's double lockdown, essentially. So it's very well protected.
I'm not sure it is resolved yet who would hold the CR, whether that's the Conservation Trust or we would ask the Sudbury Valley trustees to hold it. But to the extent that there's a third layer, that would be the third layer is the application of a CR to it.
All right, then with that in mind, it sounds like a go forward kind of just a deal.
Okay, do we have someone that would like to make a motion of support?
I would move that the Littleton Conservation Commission support Article, oh boy, I lost it. Article 8, the Webster land acquisition at the spring 2024 town meeting.
Second.
Yeah, Andrew, that's fine. Okay. All those in favor? We'll do a roll call vote.
Roll call vote. All right, Chase,
Chase Gerbig, aye.
Ed,
That both sides.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
and myself, I. It's unanimous.
Okay.
There is one other element just to note here, and I think, Tim, you had emailed about this. We are going to try to get the language in, I think, to open up the possibility of potentially applying grant funds to this. To the extent that we could get some. I think there's a big lift to make that happen. But Tim, we'll see what we can do, right?
Yeah, we're going to try.
Chase, that would be an amendment on the floor.
Yeah, the way that would work is that we would need the town clerk's office to essentially print out a revised motion that is in a form that would allow us to apply for land grants. Essentially, the motion needs to be in a particular form to make a grant application viable.
So does someone need to make a motion to amend that on the floor?
Someone would. I don't believe it needs to be the Conservation Commission in
So
particular.
it could be the Board of Select member.
Correct, yes. Someone needs to move to amend the article.
Okay. So Ed, that would be really cool if we could get that done. It would open up a lot more opportunities for us to get grant money for that purchase.
Sure.
But it is a big lift quickly.
Mhm.
Okay.
Would-
Okay.
I assume the warrant is going to get updated to reflect the the purchase price.
Yes, that at a minimum will be amended on town meeting floor. The question is whether we also have a lot more text to go with it to apply for a
Sure.
land grant.
All right.
So who is physically presenting that now?
Not to be too aggressive here, but I was planning on it, so happy to have
Okay.
someone else do it.
Well, you still have the old slide deck. You can modify them.
I will tell you that strategically, given that CPC voted to use to essentially buy it in cash, and the voting threshold is now 50% as opposed to 2/3. I'm going to orient town meeting to what's going on, but I don't necessarily plan on beating them over the head with it.
Right. I think just the natural aspects, because there are going to be hopefully some new townspeople that aren't familiar with the Webster property.
Yes.
Absolutely. And Chase, you did an amazing
Okay.
job last time. So full confidence.
We'll see.
Okay, let's go ahead and scoot over to 10 Ivy. Tim and I were out on site and Kyle was out on site as well. And so we did issue a cease and desist and enforcement. And so what I'd like to do before we open up discussion is that we would have a vote to ratify that, to make that. So, motion.
There, you're cutting out, I think. Unless it's just my computer.
No, I think it's
She's
her.
cutting out.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you now. I'll move to ratify the enforcement order for 10 Ivy.
Okay, and I second.
Roll call vote. Chase,
Chase Gerbig, aye.
Ed,
That full side.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
and myself, I. It's unanimous.
Okay, great. And who's here to speak to 10 Ivy? Is that Alec?
That is Alec.
Okay. Is Alec unmuted? Or Alec, if you want to introduce yourself, that would be great. And then Tim, if you can call up the new plan that was submitted,
new
that would
plan?
be
Sure.
appreciated.
Yeah. Hello, if I can share my screen because this plan's a little difficult. First off, my name is Alec Chongers, the engineer for the project here at 10 Ivy Road. This plan was designed in AutoCAD, and then I switched over to Carlson throughout the year, so it's very difficult to make this plan look pretty now. So I apologize for the ugliness on it. If I can share my screen, that'd be very helpful. But am I able to do that?
Yep, you should be good to go, Alec.
And again, it's gonna be very blocky and things like that. Like trees are squares here and all sorts of funky stuff because it's two different drafting programs, and it's what we have to deal with.
Okay, so Alec, before you get started, if you could just orient the commission to what the order of conditions was, where we are right now. So we had you stop for a week and then kind of talk about your plan for dewatering. But with your cursor, if you could outline the resource area, that would be appreciated.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm gonna try to see how it works on here. All right.
Yep.
The highlight in there, let me bold that up for you. Just kidding. It won't let me do it again. This is gonna be it's a tough program because it's old now. But right here, you can see is the that's the 50-foot buffer, and that's the 100-foot buffer right here. This is a project located on 10 Ivy Road. It's a septic system upgrade. It's no increase in flow. The excuse me. So again, can everyone see that? I just want to make sure. I can't see what you guys can see.
Yep.
So
We can
that's a 50-foot buffer, and this is the 100-foot buffer. We're putting in a new septic system, a replacement, and groundwater. We had when we did the testing back about a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was not nearly as high as we anticipated. And I really wasn't involved when this construction started. And as they started doing the construction process, they had a high groundwater trying to install the septic tank itself. But the contractor thought he was doing the right thing by pushing it beyond the 100-foot buffer, but he was discharged. It was still there happened to be a catch basin that looked like it discharges back into the wetland, which is where we are standing now. So everything's been stopped. No work has continued on, and what we're proposing is this essentially a dewatering tank, truck with the tank in the back of it, because all we have left to dewater is the hole is pretty much excavated. We have to excavate it to get the inspection by Jim Griffey, the Board of Health, and then once it gets the approval, you're just backfilling with Title V sand, C33 sand, and then that's the last of any dewatering that's going to be happening on the project. I propose if you guys are against that, we can put a dewatering pit, but I think the best solution in terms of protect the resource would just be the pump truck, because there's not too much water that's going to need to be pumped out of this to finish up the project.
Okay, Alec, thank you. Just a quick questions that I have, observations that I had that day with Tim and Kyle. Can you, with your cursor, highlight the lot line on the right side? We are actually on the adjacent property with current fill. And then after that, Alec, if you could address the erosion control measures and if they've been reinforced.
Yeah, so I was so again, can you guys see the property line right there? That's the property line there. Then the adjacent house would I think there's a new address for it now. I believe it's new construction. At the time it didn't have an address registered to it. But that's so in terms of the erosion control, I know you guys requested to add additional erosion control, about 60-foot lengths to cover the disturbed soil. And that is before construction starts. I have to confirm with the contractor I advise them to install the erosion control per your request on the visit. I obviously wasn't there, but they are intending and planning on doing that as part of the process. And if you guys have any additional concerns with the erosion, we can address that now as well.
So I guess you had failure in a few spots below the septic system as you're facing the lake, and then on the right side where your cursor just was. So Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, those were two areas that were noticeable that you had breaks or you had fill that was spilling over.
Yeah, so the area to the rear of the property was where we had a rip in the wattles. And then on the right side of the property, we had a good amount of soil going over the wattles.
So this is a little bit news to me, so I don't get all the details. I was on vacation earlier this week, so but that's that I can't I don't want to say words under my make a liar of myself, but we can confirm that's addressed. And if Tim would want to come out for a site walk before the work obviously continues and make sure all the erosion is corrected by then, that's something certainly we can do.
I'm perfectly comfortable. In fact, I think that the right approach is to take the water off site. There are two elements of this that I want to make sure are not lost in the shuffle here, and they're probably, frankly, outside of our purview. They're more Board of Health's. But if the issue here is that water was significantly higher than anticipated, I want to make sure that the Board of Health has been notified of that and has considered that field condition and whether or not it impacts the design of the septic system. So that's number one. Number two is associated with the discharge and where it ultimately went to. Actually, there's three things. Discharge and where it ultimately went to. Tim, this is more a question for Tim. Tim, do you know, was there a significant amount of sediment there essentially that was captured in catch basins, or are the catch basins in okay condition and so on?
Are you talking about the catch basin down by, like, going into Frog Pond, right?
Where it was discharged.
Yeah, so it was discharging. I mean, the immediate discharge was up onto Ivy. It went all the way down Ivy, and then it went all the way down Lake into the storm drain going into Frog Pond.
Okay.
I didn't notice a terrible difference in, it's hard to say because try to compare it to like when I've previously seen it, and I haven't really taken detailed like observations of how it was before. I didn't notice anything egregious.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Chase, that's a good point because we don't know if a lot has been captured in that catch basin. So we may want to talk to DPW to have that cleaned.
I think that's right. Or it's at least worth having DPW come pull it just to make sure that there's not a unreasonable accumulation of sediment there. Alec,
So,
when I look
Alec,
at the...
that would be, yep.
Go ahead.
Yep. So is that something, Chase, from a procedural standpoint, it would be on his to-do list, but would Alec be the one to call DPW, or would Tim on Alec's behalf?
I think it'd have to be Tim because I can't have the that'd be like a request from the DPW, which would be a governing body. So I think that'd have to be Tim to request it.
I think that's probably right. I'm also perfectly comfortable allowing the work to proceed. That's not an immediate harm at this point if the water is going to be taken off. But I do think that we need to resolve that before we lift the enforcement order to confirm that the sedimentation there wasn't a problem.
You want me to answer the first question you had? Or?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'll have to. Like I said, I wasn't available early this week, but the video I saw, it didn't look like there's much suspended solids. It was pretty clear discharge, and it wasn't coming out at a high rate. And then the terms for the high groundwater, but the reason why we're having it, we had redox around like 24, 30 inches, and now we're just having seepages high around 24, 30 inches, which is estimated seasonal high groundwater. So the system itself is still 2 feet above the estimated seasonal high groundwater. It's just digging.
Alec, I'm going to stop you right here. All I want to do is make sure Board of Health is aware.
Oh yeah, they're aware.
And if they bless it, like we are not in a position to tell you it's okay or it's not.
Yep. Understood. Yeah, they are aware. Jim's aware. Everything's still compliant with the Title V and local regulations.
I would like to see confirmation that Jim has been made aware of that, not just in terms of a field inspection. An email, you can forward it to Tim just as a...
Yeah, absolutely. He will, because he has to, Jim has to do the field inspection, so he's able to see where groundwater is when he does his inspection, but we can certainly have Jim forward an email to Tim to confirm that for you guys.
Okay.
So there is an interesting situation here because in the order of conditions and through the process of permitting, we noted that dewatering was not, we had asked and the applicant said no. We also have a condition that says that this work would be done during the summer months. And so that might be why we're having some high water as well. Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that
I don't know.
not one of conditions?
I don't know if that was a condition. I know that it was stated in the minutes that that's what the applicant stated.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what the applicant stated of record.
granted, if it was last year this summer, it would have been same result because groundwater's been about 3 feet above average the past year and a half. So unfortunately, it's been very wet. But I did have to double check with the conditions if that was part of it, or if Tim says not. But regardless, it's groundwater is where it is now, and it's been pretty consistent throughout the summer as well as spring and fall the past year and a half.
Okay, other commissioners, questions, comments?
I guess I do have one comment. I'm not interested in fully lifting the enforcement order until we understand what the status of the catch basin, but I'm willing to allow the work to proceed. But I want the enforcement order to live until it's fully resolved. Does that make
Yeah.
some sense?
Absolutely. So, Alec, what that means that tonight we would come up with guidelines for what we're allowing you to do. But parallel to that is that you have to make sure you're fulfilling other obligations like the catch basin. But foremost, you wouldn't be able to start until the erosion controls are refreshed and Tim or Amy, if she's back, has had a chance to approve that with usually 2 days' notice.
Understood. Yep.
And then in addition, you would have the water truck there, the dewatering truck there.
Yep. That's
Okay.
that's the plan.
So what are with all this information, what do you think would be your goal to start?
As soon as Tim's able to get out, I'll have a conversation with the installer tomorrow or this evening to see if the erosion control's been addressed, and then as soon as Tim's able to get out there, we'd like to start that going so we can get the project finished up. So
Yeah, I can get out there. I mean, I'm in tomorrow until about 12:30. So
yeah, I'll follow up with them after if we can coordinate you to get out there, and so we can wrap it up. Because after, like I said, after that, there's no more water issue. We'll be above a seasonal high groundwater, and that won't be a concern. Obviously, we need to address the erosion control breaks and catch basin, but they just want to get the hole itself, the system itself installed.
Okay, so I think realistically, unless they can get the erosion controls really in order tomorrow, you might be looking at Tim's inspection on Monday.
Yes, depending on
because
whether
if nothing from when we left it. Pardon me?
I said, yep, absolutely, because I don't know if they fixed the erosion. I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, okay. So Tim, I don't think realistically, and with this time crunch and all that you've got going on right now with town meeting prep, I would say if you want to leave a message either over the weekend or shoot an email, perhaps Monday or Tuesday, be able to get out. Or a commissioner can go out as well. So we're going to keep the enforcement order in place. And so what I'm hearing is that we are going to allow you to go ahead to go forward once erosion control is installed and approved, and you have the dewatering truck there, then you can go ahead and start with the septic system.
That sounds fair, yep. And then
Okay.
also the catch basin too we'll have to deal with as well. So we got that 3 things. So that's not a problem. We can take care of that, and we'll be in communication with Tim via email or however is the best. So
Okay.
sounds like a plan.
And our next meeting, Tim, is the 14th.
Yep.
So Alec, we would put you on for an update. We would want you to come in for an update on the 14th.
Yep. Let me just throw on the calendar, make sure I got no other conflicted meetings, but we will make that work. May 14th,
And then
correct?
time is, yep, Tuesday.
7 o'clock.
Okay. Any other questions for 10 Ivy? Okay. All right. Thank you
It'll
very
be
much.
around
Thanks
that
for
time,
joining us.
Alec. It may not be exactly at 7.
Okay.
Take a look at
I'll check the meetings, and that's not a problem. Well, thank you guys for squeezing us in, and we'll be in touch.
Actually, it wouldn't even be till after 7:30.
Right, yeah.
And so-
Yeah, it'll be definitely after 7:30. Okay.
Yep,
Thank you
no
for joining us.
problem. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Take
Yeah, thank you. Unless we have any other comments or discussions, are we good? See
Motion to
everyone
adjourn.
Actually,
Yep.
before we entertain that motion, Tim, I do think we should still post a meeting for the Tuesday night of town meeting for the Conservation Commission, just in case something comes up that needs to be addressed. I would
Okay.
rather have it posted and then not use it than the other way around.
What time are we looking for?
Call it 15 minutes before town meeting, half an hour
Okay.
before town meeting. I might check in with Jim and see what he advises there.
Okay.
Do you
But
have
let's-
enough time, Chase?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit there, Sarah.
Sorry, is there enough time to post? Today's Thursday, so that will be Friday.
Meeting's not until Tuesday. So
Yeah, if I get in tomorrow,
So it's 3 calendar days, not 3 business days.
two
So-
calendar.
Okay.
And I do know that CPC will be meeting jointly with FinCom and Select Board at 6 p.m. So I don't know if we wanted to maybe post for 6 p.m. just in case something crazy came up.
We can do that and then wrangle a quorum if we really need it.
Yep.
did I hear 6
Great.
p.m.? Is that what I heard? Okay.
6 o'clock. Yep.
Okay.
I will now
Great.
second
Do you have a
Andrew's
motion?
motion.
Roll call votes. Chase.
So we have a motion.
Oh,
Chase
sorry,
Garvey, aye.
Sarah. Ed.
Hold side.
Sarah.
She dropped.
I
Oh,
heard her
no.
say aye before she dropped.
Ah, and myself, I. So it's unanimous. All right.
Have a
Thanks,
great
everybody.
evening.